Hi everyone, Spiros here. I thought I'd do a podcast to talk a little bit about what I picked up on my time at the conference in Brussels, which was on Tuesday. So taking a different approach. I've done a lot of podcasts mainly for my students when I was teaching in the Graduate Certificate of Learning Design at QUT. And I always combine these with a really nice location because I figure if I have nothing interesting to say, then at least you can enjoy the view. And there's plenty of nice views here in Greece to choose from. So just a few things on the actual event itself. Obviously on EdTech, obviously EIT, Urban Mobility were the main organisers, but EIT Campus also featured in the organising of it. And it was set up quite interestingly in that, yes, there were panels, but there was also a gamified approach to the day. And I felt that was really interesting in that it allowed us, one, to have fun, one, to sort of get to know our table members really well, who were from different areas, different countries. I had ones from the EU on my panel, someone from EIT Manufacturing, and someone who was from an EdTech company. So it's quite interesting. And we went through a number of different sort of gamified approaches around EdTech. So that was really nice. So it was nice that the organisers had thought about how do we get to engage our audience and get them talking and networking together. The three things that stood out at the beginning of the session was that EdTech is growing exponentially. Okay, we sort of know this, but the biggest pie is in the US for obvious reasons, but EU wants to be a player. And it seems that EIT is well positioned with its KICs, with the digital component, with its reach and its resources to be a major player in that. So that was quite interesting. The other thing that came out was that we need to be mindful of language that we're using. You know, what does digital literacy actually mean? As well as what does deep tech skills mean. So there was a lot around the language, and it was nice and refreshing to hear that. And then Maria, the CEO of EIT Urban Mobility, talked about the regulatory environment and how we're moving towards that, but we need to be mindful that that doesn't stifle innovation, particularly in the EdTech space. There was a lot of talk around that we have the resources and the money to be able to move forward with EdTech. So it's more about joining forces. It's more about how do we collaborate. And what came up here was the fact that we could get all the heads of the digital learning together, or the KICs, and be able to scale this up. And we need to scale this up. Why? Because there's a real need within Europe about upskilling and reskilling. Particularly when it comes to new technologies, particularly in this new generative AI space that we find ourselves in. So it's about how we do that and how we build that talent and how we develop that. So, and how, I guess another way of doing it is that it was refreshing to hear things about co-cooperation, co-collaboration, and more importantly about co-design. My background's in learning science, so I'm always mindful about, the EdTech horse dragging the pedagogical cart. I always like to flip those around, particularly when I've spoken to my students about EdTech and learning science and learning design. So there was some mention around that, about, learning outcomes, about learning design within some of the panels and some of the speakers. And what was also refreshing was to hear about that we need to include the learner perspective or the student perspective. Now, this EdTech conference was very much geared towards higher education because I think of the audience we had there, that there were some academics and also a little bit more about industry or lesser, I guess, featured. So how do we work with EdTech companies also came up as well. And again, the focus, as I said, on the student and the learner. There was some mention, but little, on an evidence-based approach using scientific research. So I think we need to bring that more into the conversation, and that was obviously, when that was brought up, people were nodding their heads and conferring with that we need a more evidence-based approach when it comes to EdTech. We need to have more cross-industry dialogue. We need to be collaborative. We need to be able to seek that funding and utilize it. And there was a nice term used, digital by design. Not a new term, but nice to talk around that. The challenges is that the EU has different cultures, unlike the US and Australia, for example. We have different cultures that sometimes opposed to each other, or at so many different stages of EdTech innovation. So one approach that someone mentioned on the panel was around, is using design thinking approach to bring some of those players together. And again, I thought that was really encouraging, having some of my background in design thinking and having used that considerably when I've co-designed programs, particularly using the ed technology. And then how do we integrate that, whether it's in the classroom, within lectures, or within professional settings? So again, co-creation came up, co-design, and bringing all the stakeholders together in the same room. And as well as a user-centric approach to the whole concept of EdTech. They were able to collate some of our ideas that we generated in the gamification section, which was encouraging, and they're going to pull that together and put something together to present to us. This was also the first of what they're hoping to be 3 conferences. The next one being in 2025. My personal thing is here, I thought we could do something a little bit sooner, just how EdTech is, and I suggested that, how EdTech is moving so quickly. So overall, a really interesting experience, great for myself and to be representing RMIT Europe there. I think that's really important for us. Great networking to meet some of the other kicks, like manufacturing, digital in particular. So that was, and obviously EIT, Urban Mobility, and the campus people were there, and some of the people in the EU, in the Commission as well. So overall, really interesting. And as I said, I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Give me your comments below, and just so you know, you see that little bridge, sort of yonder. Well, I just live across from that bridge, so I visit here quite often. I think we need to have our next RMIT Europe team meeting here or something. Anyway, I'll leave that with you, Marta. Thanks, everyone.